this is the 29th lecture of the course MTH 204A first section B. Recall that in the last lecture we have listed some we have listed some of the main and important properties of Z. So, what are those properties? So, one is every ideal is principal. The second was for any given A B, there exists a D integer which is the GCD of A and B. Then also GCD has the property that D can be written as Ax plus By for some integers for some x and y in Z. And then there was that if P is a prime, then P divides A or P divides B whenever P divides A B, and the fifth was fundamental theorem of arithmetic. Okay. Now, as we have already said that our aim is to establish this fact in the more general setting. So, recall that all these facts are consequences of the division algorithm. So, therefore, the setup if in a ring we have the notion of division algorithm which can be regarded as the generalization of the division algorithm for Z, then of course, in that setting, in that setup, we can expect all these results to hold. Okay. That led us to the definition of Euclidean domain. What is an Euclidean domain? First of all, it is an integral domain where equipped with a size function okay, such that one has the division algorithm. This is what is called an Euclidean domain. In the last lecture, we have talked about several examples of Euclidean domain, and then towards the end, we proved that every Euclidean domain is PID. It is principal ideal domain. What it says is every ideal is a principal ideal. It is an integral domain whose every ideal is principal ideal. So, this is what we have proved in the last lecture. Now, we will continue with PID. So, what this shows is the class this is a larger class of integral domains than this class of Euclidean domains. Okay. So, therefore, as I said that we would like to establish this fact in the in the more general setting as much as we can. So, we will aim to establish these five properties for in any general PID. Okay. All right. So, let us do that. So, here one thing is like since it is so for PID the first property is automatically there by definition. We now go for this we now go for the second one, that is the GCD, that is this GCD part. So, we have to first define what I mean by a GCD in a PID, or so let's first define that. The definition is made in any general integral domain. So, R is an integral domain. So, for two A and B in R, not both 0, not both 0. So, D belongs to R is said to be a GCD, is said, in fact, we must avoid 0, is said to be a GCD of A and B if the following two properties hold. First of all, D must divide both of them, and E divides both of them, then E must divide D, E must divide D. If D is such a thing, then we call D a GCD. Okay. So, therefore, from the definition it is clear that given any A and B not both 0, if D and D dash are both the GCDs of A and B, then D and D dash must be associate. Okay. So, remark are both greatest common GCDs of A and B implies they are D and D prime and associate. Okay. Yeah, so now let me spend some time by emphasizing this definition more. So what does the definition say? It says that first of all D has to be a common divisor of both A and B, and secondly what it is saying is D has to be a maximal among the common divisors. So, let me explain what I mean by this. So, maybe we can consider this set. So, this is the set of all elements such that E divides both A and B. So, in this set let us give a partial order relation x for x and y if and only if x divides y. Okay. It is clearly a partial order relation. So, therefore what it says that, so if D okay, so in this, so there is a partial order set S with respect to this is a partial order set, is a poset, and it is clear that if D is a GCD of A and B, then from the definition it is clear that D is a maximal element of S. Element in S. Why? So, if D is not a maximal element, what it means that D is not a maximal element, then what it means is okay, I have to be slightly careful, because if x and y are associates, then also it may happen Okay. So, what about either x equals to y or x is a proper divisor of y? What? So, does this making it a poset? If not, then we will simply scrap this idea. So, of course, reflexivity is there. For transitivity, suppose x y is equals to x prime, none of them are units, and maybe y is a proper divisor of z. So, y prime, none of them are units. So, we can simply write x prime, y prime, and okay, and x is not so of course by choice x is not a unit. And what about y and x prime and y prime? So, x prime y prime cannot be a unit, because if x prime y prime is a unit, then that will force both x prime y prime to be units. So, therefore, therefore, I think the symmetricity is done. The symmetricity is done if x is a proper divisor of y, and if y equal to z, then of course, x becomes a proper divisor of z. So, transitivity is there, reflexivity is there. Then let me check just quickly the antisymmetry, that suppose x divides y and okay. So, suppose x y and y x. So, if x equals to y, then it is already over. If not, then x is a proper divisor of y, and then y is a proper divisor of x. So, okay, what's the argument? Argument is if this happens, then it cannot happen that x is a proper divisor of y. X is a proper divisor of y, and y is also a proper divisor of x. So, some y prime x prime equal to y, since we are in the integral domain, they cancels. So, this becomes unit, yeah. So, it is done. So, what we have just showed is if this happens, then x must be equal to y, otherwise x will be a proper divisor of y. And so, what I am saying is this together with the assumption x not equal to y leads to some contradiction. Okay. So, okay, done. So, in this partial order set, D has to be a maximal element, because if D is not a maximal element, then there will be a further common divisor, let us say D prime of A and B, which such that D must divide D prime, because of that is going to be the maximal, that is going to be an element, but then from the definition D prime has to divide D, therefore, they will be associates, certainly that is not allowed. Okay. All right. I hope that this works. So, the point that I am going to make is that D is a maximal element among the common divisors of A and B. Maximal in which sense? That is, there is no further common divisor of A and B such that D is a proper divisor of that. Okay. So, there is no, again let me repeat, there is no common divisor, on A and B whose proper divisor is D. Okay. All right. So, this shows that this is the maximal element, and then we must also should make one more remark. So, this part is over, I can erase that. Now, so here I would like to make another point, that it is not always true that for any ring, it is not always true that given any two elements, let us consider integral domain, given any integral domain, it is not true that for any two given non-zero elements there will be a GCD. For example, if we simply take let us say if we simply take let us say z root 5, there consider these two elements 6 and 6 and 2 into okay 2 plus 2 root 5, which is nothing but 2 into 1 plus root 5. So, both these elements are divisible by 2. So, 2 is a common divisor. Okay. And also there is nothing. So, also there 2 is a common divisor. Similarly, this is also a common divisor because 6 can be written as 1 plus root 5 into 1 minus root 5. So, both of them are common divisors. Both of them are common divisors. Also they are maximal because no further factor of 2, I mean yeah. So, also they are maximal because anything which contains 2 as a proper factor cannot divide cannot divide both. So, they are maximal, however, neither this divides this nor this divides that. So, it is not always true that in any general integral domain we will always have GCD for any pair of elements. Okay. But however, we will show that this is indeed the case when we are working with a PID. So, let me record that as a theorem. Okay. So, let R be a PID and A and B are two non-zero elements. Okay. Then we consider the ideal generated by A and B. So, since we are working in a PID, so okay, let me put it in this way, since we are working in a PID, so this ideal is also a principal ideal. So, let D belongs to R be such that D is the generator of this ideal. Okay. So, the claim is then D is a GCD of A and B. Okay. So, why so? So, if before getting into the proof, let us observe that if we can prove this, if we can prove this theorem, then that actually establishes the analogues of 2 and 3 in this setup, because this immediately tells that D can be written as a combination of A and B. Okay. So, if we can prove this, then of course, GCD existence of GCD for any two pairs such that both non-zero, and then GCD the GCD can be expressed as a combination of A and B, both will be done in a single shot. Okay. Now, let us come to the proof of this. Where should I do? Maybe I can erase this. So, the proof is there. So, what is there? What are we doing? So, by definition, D is the generator of these two ideals. So, therefore, D. So, any element in the right hand side must be a multiple of D. So, A and B both lies in this right hand side, therefore, D must be a common divisor. So, clearly D divides A and D divides B. Okay. the next we have to show that if, now if, this is actually a very trivial proof, if A divides both A and B, now you see that therefore, A equal to E A prime and at the same time B equal to let us say E B prime, okay. And by our, and by this assumption D must be some A x plus B y for some x and y. Now, you see that you substitute A by E times A prime and B by E times B prime, you will see that the right hand side will be E times some element in the ring and that is equal to D. So, therefore, E will divide D. Okay. So, into A prime x plus B prime y, E divides D. So, thus we have proved that given any A and B, we look at this ideal, any generator of this ideal, it is a principal ideal, right, because we are working in a PID. So, any generator of this ideal is going to be a GCD. Okay. Since from the we are in a principal ideal domain, therefore, not only GCD exists, also it shows, as I said, GCD can be written as a combination of A and B. Okay. So, as I have said that my aim is to establish these properties in general setting. In particular, now we are working with this PID. So, therefore, let us try to prove let us try to find the analogues of the fourth and fifth properties listed there. Okay. So, the fourth one is about primes. So, in the last lecture I said that in the general setting there are two different irreducibility and primes, there are two distinct notions. Let me once again elaborate that. So, if you remember that in Z, how do we define a prime? Simply by saying which does not admit any proper factorization, right. Now, if you recall the definitions that we have made in the last lecture, so which one resembles? So, in the last lecture we defined two notions, one is irreducibility. So, this is in any integral domain irreducibility. So, how did we define that? If A equal to B C, then one of them must be, one of B and C must be a unit. Okay. Or in other words, one equivalently one of them must be an associate of A. So, therefore, it does not have a proper divisor. Okay. So, the only divisors of any irreducible elements are units and associates. Okay. So, you see that the definition of irreducibility, it is exactly similar to that of a prime element in Z, right. So, exactly this is the way we define prime numbers in Z, right, which does not have a proper factorization. And on the on contrast, rather in the general setup we have defined prime elements by this, that is whenever it divides a product it must divide one of the factors. Okay. So, let us again understand that, I mean in Z the way we define primes in the general setting, we have defined irreducibility in that in that way, right, in terms of proper non-existence of proper factorization. So, like what means primality in case of Z? Now, in general settings that is exactly meaning irreducibility. Okay. So, and in the general setting primality means something else, it is something like that. Then also we have a connection. So, we prove that in any integral domain primes are always irreducibles, Okay. Primes are always irreducibles, that we have proved. So, Primes are always irreducible, so that we have proved. So, the question is whether the opposite is true, that is irreducibles are primes. For example, in the very special case, for a very special case. So, now I mean please try to get accustomed with the this new terminology. So, now whenever I say it is prime, that is in the sense of irreducibility. So, keeping that in mind, here we see that in this PID, namely Z, irreducibles are primes, okay, because anything which is prime is in the sense of irreducibility, has this property that we have seen for Z. So, therefore, we see that the converse is the converse is true at least for the PID Z. So, it is a very natural question whether that holds for any general PID or not, and that is exactly the content of the theorem, of the following theorem. So, let me again try to explain that the way we have been introduced to the notion of primality along the its analog in the general setting is what we call irreducibility. Okay. So, the way a prime integer is defined is exactly in the same way an irreducible element is defined in the general setting. So, therefore, kind of this irreducibility. So, this irreducible, these are the perhaps the more general terminologies for prime integers, but in general setup prime means something else. In Z we see that the irreducibility property of P implies primality of P. Okay. So, now we are going to show that it holds for any PID. Okay. I hope it is now clear. R is a PID. R is a PID. Every irreducible is a prime. Every irreducible is prime. Okay. This is what we are going to prove in any PID. So, therefore, when we are working with PIDs, we do not have to really bother that in which sense should we consider, whether we should consider something just in the sense of irreducibility or in the sense of primality, that does not matter, because they are irreducibles and primes are going to be same. So, we do not have to be very careful whether we are taking irreducibles or primes. Anyway, so let me prove this. So, let A be an irreducible element. Our work is to show A is a prime. So, therefore, assume that A divides BC, and we have to show A divides B or A divides C. So, assume A divides BC and A does not divide B. Okay. A does not divide B. Now, what can we say here? Remember that, well, I think I should have told this right there, that of course, that in any general domain it is not true that if you take any two A and B such that not both 0, there will be a GCD. That is not quite clear, but however, if it turns out that there is only units are the common divisors of both of them, then we must have GCD, and the GCD, one GCD will be the unity. So, what I mean is, I should make sure here that suppose it happens that only units are common divisors of A and B. So, this is in any general integral domain. Suppose that for two A and B, one observes that A and B then in this case for this A and B, GCD of course will exist. So, GCD exists. And in fact, so this is an observation. 1 is a GCD. All right. So, if for two elements A and B, if one happens to be a GCD, then we call they are relatively prime or co-prime. Okay. So, now let us come here. So, if A does not divide B, we are working in a PID. So, there should be some GCD, there should be a GCD of A and B, right. Now, GCD of A and B, A is irreducible, okay. Irreducibles do not admit any proper divisors, right. So, then what does that mean? So, let D be a GCD of A and B. Since A is irreducible, D is, so D is a divisor of A, of course. So, A is irreducible. So, D is either an associate of A or this unit. So, D cannot be an associate of A, because in the if D is an associate of A, then D, since D is also dividing B, therefore, automatically we will get B equal B is divisible by A. So, therefore, D cannot be an associate of A, this forces D is an unit. Okay. I hope the argument is clear, that if D is an associate of A, but and then D divides B, so therefore, it will force A will divide B, which is not possible, and now it is almost there. So, therefore, D is just an unit, and so therefore, we can take D to be 1 because it is a unit. So, therefore, it forces this forces A to be Ax plus By for some x and y. Now, take the product B equal to A Bx plus okay. So, A does not divide B, so I have to show A divides C, okay, sorry. So, C equals to A Cx plus B Cy. Now, you see that this here AC, so this term is divisible by A divides BC, so this term is divisible by A. So, therefore, it will force the left hand to be divisible by A. So, that shows that in a PID, irreducibles and primes, they are the same things. So, therefore, in a PID we really do not have to bother about whether we are considering irreducibles or primes, whatever you want you can do, as they are all same. So, what we have seen for Z, this we have now established for any general, thus this is established for any general PID. Okay. Now, let us move towards this fundamental theorem. So, please keep in mind that in Z, however, the way we define primality, now in general setting that is called irreducibility, okay. But in general setting prime is called something else. So, irreducibles are not always primes, but primes are always irreducibles in any integral domain, but when we are looking at PID, then there is no issue. Okay. So, now let us talk about fundamental theorem. So, the point is, what is the fundamental theorem in Z? It says that if we take any integer n, of course non-zero, otherwise it any non-zero integer n. So, n can be written as follows. So, there exist primes, okay. So, there exist primes p1 and pk and positive integers alpha 1 up to alpha k, such that this is this n equals to this plus minus 1 times this, okay. And these pi's are unique. So, this is the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. So, now if you want to establish that in the general setup of any PID, so the question is what analog one should expect to be, one should expect to be there in any PID. So, what should be the proper analog? So, this is the first question. So, let me put it as what is the analog of fundamental theorem of in a PID. So, let us try to formulate that. So, here the apparently this should be the following that okay. So, here also we should say one more thing, that if n is plus minus 1 or minus 1, then certainly PIs will not exist. So, not equal to 0 or plus minus 1, let me do that. Okay. So, therefore, here the statement should be A is non-zero, and what are plus minus 1? These are units in Z. So, non-zero and non-unit, non-zero and non-unit. So, therefore, I mean we are trying to formulate what is the analog of fundamental theorem is. So, it should be then it should be, I am not saying that it happens, there should be irreducibles P1 Pk such that n equal to Pk. Okay. Then we will we may try to rearrange the factors and bring it in this form, that is a secondary issue. So, this is one thing, and this is about this analog of existence. So, basically we are, so the fundamental theorem has two parts, one is existence, another part is uniqueness. So, we have to formulate the analogs of both parts in the set of any general PID. So, this is the analog of the existence part, that is given non-zero non-unit, there exist an irreducible, there exist irreducibles. So, this is for existence. Now, what is going to be the analog for uniqueness? So, apparently it looks like the following should be, suppose A admits two different factorizations, then first of all m k should be equal to m, and up to rearrangement Pi should be equal to Qi. So, just at the first sight, this is what seems to be a, this was a good candidate, right. This is what is very like if you want to just immediately generalize this to this setup. So, this is what apparently we think that is the right choice, but actually this is not, because the existence of units actually might like existence of units may complicate this situation more. Let me explain that by citing an instance. So, let us say again you see that so let me I think leave it. So, in this ring, so what about 2 plus I and 2 minus I? Okay. So, that is going to be exactly 5. That is going to be exactly 5. Now, at the same time, this also can be written as I into 2 minus I into 2 plus I, right. So, this is going to be 1 plus 2I, other one must be 1 minus 2I. So, you see that these are irreducibles, that you can immediately see by checking the norms. These are also irreducibles, but I mean neither this is equal to any one of this or this is equal to any one of this. So, what has happened that units like in this, so I mean the irreducibles are of course like, okay, let me put it in this way that this is a factorization of 5, this is a factorization of 5 into irreducibles, but what we are actually expecting here Pi is to be equal to Qi is, that is not going to happen here, because units are, they are the main spoilers. Okay. So, I mean when the PID like in a general PID you do not know the, I mean you do not know what, I mean whether you have, you do not know how many units are there. So, if you are working in Z, then you are only having 2 units, 1 and plus 1 and minus 1. If your PID is a polynomial ring, then you know that the elements of the field are the units. So, in that case at least you have a normalization that you can work with monic polynomials. For example, here if in order to avoid these problems created by units, what you can do is you can only stick to positive integers, okay, just to like just to avoid the trouble caused by the units. That so kind of we do have such normalizations in these special cases, but in any arbitrary general PID certainly we do not have any such normalization. So, their units are likely to units have the units have the full liberty to change the irreducibles, okay. So, how to get rid of this problem? Look that though this is not equals to this, however, these two irreducibles are associates, right, okay. So, I cannot guarantee they will be same, but what I can guarantee that each factor appearing here is going to be an associate of the irreducibles appearing on the right hand side. So, in view of that we should formulate now in this way. If this happens, then up to k equal to m, and up to a rearrangement each pi is an associate of okay. So, now this seems to be now this seems to be fine. Of course, we cannot be sure unless we prove it, but at least the one formulation that we have made earlier, that is certainly not going to happen because of the existence of a lot of units. So, that we do not have a unique, we do not have a natural way to normalize, okay. So, therefore, these are the things, these are the statements that we are going to prove for any general PID. With that I will, okay. So, I will prove this that in this lecture, and with that I will finish. So, okay. So, let me first try this one. So, like let A be a non-zero and non-unit member. So, if A is irreducible, then we stop, okay. Then this statement is trivial. If not, then that means there is a proper factorization of, there is a proper divisor of A, right. So, there exists A1 and B1 such that A equal to A1 B1 and none of them is a unit, okay. Now, what we do is let us say A1, if A1 is like if A1 is an irreducible, we will stop. If A1 is if A1 is irreducible, we stop and go for B1. If not, we will further factorize, we will further consider a factorization of A1, okay. Let us say some A2 times something. So, this is a proper factorization of A1, that is A2 is a proper divisor of A1, okay. So, like okay, let me remind you how we actually proved that proved the fundamental theorem in case of Z. So, the proof was that is exactly going in the similar way. So, if something is irreducible, that is in that there we as I said we used to call it prime. So, if something is prime, we will stop, otherwise there will be a proper divisor, then we will further have a factorization, and at each stage whenever a factor is admitting a further proper factorization. So, both the factors at the next stage they are having, they are getting smaller and smaller, and that forces the factorization to terminate at some point of time. That was the scenario in case of Z. So, if you want to adopt the same strategy In case of a general PID, there will be a problem. What is going to be the problem apparently? So, how do we know that the factorization terminates? So, the termination of factorizations. Termination of factorizations. So, that is a question. How do we know? It's like we can't keep on going indefinitely, right? And for, I mean, it terminates means it is clear that whenever it terminates, at that point all the factors these are available which are going to be reducibles. So, therefore, like if we can guarantee that for any element A, any factorization, if we start factoring A in this way, any factorization for any of A terminates, then that will immediately give us this. Okay. So, this is the main thing, that is this termination of the factorizations. Okay. So, the question is whether for any A, of course non-unit, whether for any A, for unit of course we cannot, I mean actually for unit we cannot in fact expect such things, because like an unit can be written as further like if let us say V is a unit and U is a unit, then V can be written as U times something which is, then this is also be an unit, then we can further write it in some another unit. So, for units certainly this is not a, this is a baseless question, but if something is non-unit, we should expect that any factorization of that non-unit n element must stop. Okay. So, how can we show that? Okay, all right. So, in order to show this, let us first analyze what do we actually mean by saying the factorization stops, the termination of factorization. So, recall that what we actually want that is the following, that if A is not like, okay, try to understand in this way. Suppose for A the factorization does not stop. So, what does that mean? It means that A will admit a proper factorization A1 and B1, proper means one of them is unit, such that for further A1 and B1, like for one of them, if we the factorization goes on. Okay. That is what we mean when we say that, that is what we understand when we say the factorization, there is a factorization of A which does not, if the factorization factorization of A does not terminate. So, what do we get out of that? So, suppose this has a further proper divisor A2, then this is a further proper divisor A3. If it goes on, then since all these are proper divisors, we must observe that we get an increasing sequence of ideal like this. Okay. So, again let me try to explain. So, given a non-unit A, non-zero non-unit, if it is irreducible, then we stop, otherwise there will be a factorization, proper factorization, then we look at the factors. Then if like for both A1 and A2 we ask the same question, we go for a further factorization. So, this process goes on, the question is whether this process will terminate or not, okay? Whether this process is going to terminate or not. So, try to understand that this whole thing depends upon, like a priori depends upon the factorization of A that you are starting with. Like of course, A might have a different factorization, let us say in terms of A1 prime, B1 prime, but all I want is whatever factorization you start with, and then if you keep on the same, if you keep on applying the same, keep on following the same strategy, whatever you start with should end. That is all it means. So, now we observe that if the factorization does not terminate, then we will have an increasing chain of ideals. Okay. Conversely, if we are suppose we are having an infinite chain of and strictly increasing chain of ideals, then of course you see that if this is happening, then of course for A certainly we have a factorization that does not terminate. How? So, A will be of course some A1 times something, then A1 is again, so this is a proper factorization and therefore, this is not unit, then A1 will be some A2 times another non-unit. So, that is how it will keep on going. Okay. So, thus this termination of factorization for A is equivalently put in the following way that we, so again let me repeat, termination of factorization of A is equivalently put in this way that there cannot be any strictly increasing infinite chain of ideals, okay, like this. And the last one is actually quite obvious one. If you recall that earlier we have proved that if we are having an increasing chain of ideals, then their increasing, then their union is again going to be an ideal. So, if we are having such a chain, then we look at this, you look at its union, union is going to be an ideal, and of course, union must be some generated by some B, because we are in a PID. Now, that so therefore, B must be in one of these. So, there exists N, because this is just the union, there exists N such that B is in N, and once that is there, you see that this is N, and then we do have An plus 1, but however, B being the union, that is again inside B, which is a contradiction. So, therefore, we see that whatever A we start with, if we take any increasing, strictly increasing infinite ideals, so any strictly increasing, yeah. So, if we for any given non-zero non-unit A, we thus prove that there cannot be any strictly increasing infinite chain of ideals. Okay. So, therefore, in turn we prove that the factorization terminates. So, I repeat, what we have done here is, if we started with if A is irreducible, we stop, otherwise we will have A1 and B1, okay, and then we further factorize A1 and B1 if they are not irreducibles, and in that way, since we have proved that for any point, any non-zero non-unit element in R, the factorization, since we have proved for any non-zero non-unit A in unit element in R, there cannot be an increasing, strictly increasing chain of ideals, that forces that this factorization must stop. Okay. So, thus we prove the existential part of this. For uniqueness part, we have to do a little more work, that is also quite obvious, I would say. So, in fact, we will be proving the following. We will be proving the following. So, uniqueness okay. Let me put that let me rather prove a slightly general thing. Suppose A is P1 B to Pk, where each Pi is irreducible, and B is Q1 up to Qn, each Qj is also irreducible, and assume A divides B, then K must be equal to N and up to a rearrangement each Qi is an associate of rearrangement Pi and Qi are associates, where K. Okay. So, this is, you can see that if if we can prove this, then as a special case when A will be equal to B, that will force this. So, how to prove this? The proof is in fact quite obvious. So, remember that in irreducibles primes are like in PID we have primes and primes and irreducibles are the same things. So, look here, so P1 is dividing A, so P1 and A is dividing B, so P1 will be dividing this product, and from since P1 is a prime being irreducible, so P1 is dividing, I am writing the proof here. So, P1 is dividing this product, right. So, therefore, P1 must divide Q1 or this product. If P1 divides this product, then again in the similar way, so we can proceed, and thus we can conclude is the following. P1 must divide some Qi, right. So, this is a usual way. So, I hope that how we arrive at that conclusion is clear. So, if P1 divides this product, then we apply the same logic. So, either P1 will divide Q2 or the product of the rest. So, that is how we arrive here. So, P1 divides some Qi. Now, P1 is an irreducible, Qi is an also irreducible. So, therefore, it immediately forces P1 and Qi are associates. So, next stage what we do is the following, that we relabel the Qj's and relabel this Qi by Q1, okay, that we can do. So, this is basically a rearrangement of these terms. We will bring this Qi at the first place, and automatically, okay. So, our situation is this, Q1 up to Qn is A times something. So, P1 up to Pk times something, that we do not care, and now we have already proved that P1 divides Q1, and in fact they are associates. So, what we will do is, so P1 will be some unit times Q1, sorry, Q1 will be some unit times P1, right, because they are associates. So, we can cancel P1 from both the sides, okay, that we can do. Now, apply the same logic for P2. So, like P2 will also divide some other Qj, so relabel that by Q2, that is how we can continue. And of course, like n cannot be smaller than k, because if n is smaller than k, then after going up to that step you will have, so if n is smaller than k, then at some point of time the situation would be, here you have only units on the left hand side, but on the right hand side you have some certain irreducibles left, some Pj's are left, but that cannot happen, because that will force those irreducibles are to be units, that cannot happen. So, therefore, this is obvious. I mean this proof actually almost similar to that of fundamental theorem of algebra of arithmetic in case of Z. Well, so in view of that, this uniqueness part is over. Okay, so I think thus we have established all the 5 properties in the setup of a general PID. So, with that I will finish this lecture.